let my ops see the envy me. Passing it off like CP3. Shawty, she calling me MVP. I be on time, it's something you ain't never seen before. They call me the Dama, really want my whole team to score. Damn, yeah, too icy, yeah, too clean, yeah, my zone, yeah, 2-3, yeah, got shooters that hit from deep, bust like Giannis, yeah, too mean. Bright lights like we at the garden, on P, don't get me started. Whole team walk through me to party. If I can't make the play, I'ma lob it. If you jump, that's right on your head. Had to put him to sleep, go to bed. I'm a star, drop 50 and left. From the logo, like I'm Steph. Put it up, knock him down every time. Going hard like my life on the line. Catch me on the course, I would've dime. Never losing, I put it on mine. Had to get off my shell, I've been laying low. They get real when it comes to the playoffs. You fight with me, no it's a KO.
Hey, welcome back to another live episode of the Pit Press Live. My name's Erik Moulton, host of the show, co-owner. And we got a jam-packed episode for you guys tonight. We look forward to Saturday's matchup against, tied for first place, 9-1 Utah State. Look to kind of dive deep into what their personnel looks like. But before we kind of dive into that game, we got a special guest joining us tonight who's kind of currently behind the scenes, and we'll kind of bring him on and introduce him here in the show in just a little bit. But to properly kick off the show, I need to introduce my co-host all the way from the Bay, Mr. Ricky Thompson. What's up, man?
Hey, happy Friday Eve to those who celebrate. Happy Year of the Snake, Lunar New Year. We got it all going on. It was really hard for me in this area. A lot of people celebrating Lunar New Year to not bring out my snake of Albuquerque jokes and send them pictures of that snake. They would have no idea what it meant. But I'm glad here to talk about some basketball with you guys. I feel like I have some pent-up basketball aggression since the Lobos haven't played this week. So I'm ready to let it out here.
Feeling for that Lobo hoops. And then without further ado, the voice of Western New Mexico Mustangs, ProView Network, and the better half of the Nunez duo, Mr. Ed Nunez. How you doing, sir?
You know, I always say my son is a better man than me, man. He did better than me, you know, as far as his career. And, you know, I did better than my old man, and with the sacrifice he made for me, and I hope the sacrifice we made for our son, he's on his way to a nice little career. So I appreciate that and glad to be on with you guys.
Good to hear, Ed. Yeah, we miss Nick. We like having him on the show, full of basketball knowledge, wit, knows what he's talking about. And he's a lawyer, man, so he does plenty of research and knows what he's talking about. So I know you guys like doing side-by-side, and what a cool opportunity. But before I bring on the next guest, I do have to preface it with kind of our backstory, our history, kind of why we started the Pit Press Live. We wanted to kind of bring together some level of like a Lobo sports community. I grew up a Lobo fan. Rick grew up a Lobo fan. Ed grew up a Lobo fan. We're all grads of New Mexico, all from the area. And we kind of grew up on Lobo athletics, and we felt like we just needed kind of like a place to talk more sports. provide a little bit more coverage and just kind of talk about things we like talking about. And so we created this platform to go ahead and do so. But I feel like there's more people to that community that kind of shed some light on uncovering Lobo athletics. There's a lot more fans. I think a lot more people have opinions and things to say. And so that's kind of why we developed this platform. And we wanted to bring one of those people onto the show. He's backstage, and let me go ahead and get him introduced. His name is Noah, Mr. Noah Blaylock, and you can find him on Twitter at NoahCB. Noah is a college student currently at the University of New Mexico, and he currently runs or is a moderator for the Lobo basketball and Lobo football fan community groups on Twitter, which have kind of picked up a lot of traction over the would you say, like the last 6 or 7 months. You guys have kind of built up a following of about 1,500 fans that kind of support UNM athletics. But before I kind of take all that away and steal all your thunder, welcome to the Pit Press Live, man. I know we reached out a couple of weeks ago, but I was happy to finally get you on, and welcome to the show. How you doing tonight?
I'm doing good, guys. Appreciate you having me on, and excited to talk a little bit about the Lobos tonight. So,
yeah. So you grew up a Lobo fan. I want to know, get kind of your backstory with how you came to love our beloved Lobos. And you're not from New Mexico. Give us a little backstory. Where are you from, and how did you kind of fall in love with the University of New Mexico?
Yeah, so I'm originally from Southern California, a little bit north of San Diego area, and I've got some family, friends here in Albuquerque, but my journey to Lobo fandom, I feel like it's pretty unique. For me, it started with Brian Urlacher, actually. I'm a little young for remembering his time at UNM, but I was a big fan of his when he was on the Bears. Growing up, as a young kid, and of course, he was a UNM legend, and kind of got introduced to the Lobos that way. And a couple Lobo basketball games in 2011, 2010, around there. So kind of early Alfred days, when the team was so stacked and competing every year for Mountain West titles. So pretty easy to become a diehard for me, at least, and seeing games in the pit with, the crazy atmosphere, and then kind of the polar opposite side of, in the 2011 season with Lobo football, one of the worst teams in the nation at that time with Loxley. So, but, that didn't deter me. I became a diehard fan then, and have not missed following a game since then. So since 2011.
You're like one of us, but you're not. It doesn't necessarily need to be from New Mexico, but I think we're all diehards on this show. What are you going to school for? You're currently in business school, or?
Yeah, so I'm here at UNM studying business. Decided to be a good fit. Came to Albuquerque, a couple times a year before finally moving here. So just seemed right, and I'm glad to be here watching games on a weekly basis of the pit. It's been a lot of fun.
Well, Noah, I got to ask you if you're ever actually study, because you're so fast to put up these posts on the Lobo community. You take all the videos before I can ever get anything out. I thought I was fast, recording something, and then I checked Twitter. You already have it out with a witty comment. How did this kind of come together where, you started doing the media and now leading, some of these online communities? You're doing a fantastic job.
Well, I appreciate that. For me, since I joined Twitter in 2016, I've kind of always been posting, here and there about the Lobos, and decided, more recently to try to, have some fun with it a little bit, and put out some fun content or some funny content. And it makes me smile and it makes me happy. So, yeah, I think that's important. So.
How did the fan community, idea kind of come to fruition? I know Professor Benavidez was kind of one of the ones that was leading the charge there, but he had elected a few guys like yourself to be moderators and to kind of help run it. And you guys took off pretty fast. And then I think you guys just peaked out at 1,500 followers. How did that all start?
Yeah, so John came up with the idea last January, so it's a little over a year old now. And shortly thereafter, he asked myself and a couple other, frequents on Lobo Twitter if we'd be interested in moderating the community and kind of overseeing it, promoting the community, and then posting our own content, to help engage members of the community. And how passionate and how good Lobo fans are. So it quickly picked up steam, and now a little over a year later, and sitting at over 1,500 members in the basketball community. And then the football community also started by John back in August, I believe. So that one has a little bit less, close to a little bit under 500, I believe. But yeah, it's been a lot of fun to interact with other Lobo diehards and post there on a weekly or daily basis. It's been a lot of fun.
Noah, you talked about you're not from here. You've been monitoring Lobo games since 2011. And when Coach Alford was here, that place was madhouse. And then Coach Neal, when Craig Neal was here, Coach Weir kind of dropped off a little bit. Although his first year they went to the Mountain West Championship with a chance to get in the tournament, they didn't get there. And now with Coach Patino, and talk about your first pit experience. I've been watching games in that place since 1970, and it's a magical place, unbelievable place. I saw it when it had the mezzanine, and then it didn't have the mezzanine. And, I've seen a lot of changes to that place throughout the years. But just talk about what your first pit experience was like.
Yeah, so my first pit experience, it was a lot of fun, really memorable. It was a couple years ago. I was kind of too young to, come by myself before COVID, and then COVID happened. So I was planning on coming just before COVID, and then that happened. So my first, real pit experience was for the Iona game a couple years back when Rick Pitino came to town. And I woke up at little before 4 a.m. At my home in Southern California. Drove to the airport, had a 6 a.m. flight, connection, and then arrived in Albuquerque early afternoon. I think the game was at 3 p.m. Watched the Lobos beat Iona. It was so much fun and real memorable. And then left the pit immediately to the airport. Got to the airport like 30 minutes later. My flight left shortly thereafter, and I was back at my home that same night. So it was a crazy long day, but definitely worth it and memorable for sure.
You mentioned Lobo football, and you mentioned 2011, and Lobo football struggled. We have to be honest; they haven't had a winning season since 2016. Coach Mendenhall did get 5 wins this year, and on the cusp, on the verge of a bowl game, and then he leaves. He leaves after a year. But Coach Eck, I've been watching the recruits. He's got 30 new recruits here, and he got one, Scottree Humphrey. I have no idea how he got him, the running back from Montana State. Now, I'm an optimist. I'm a guy that's half full, not a Pollyanna that has rose-colored glasses on to say they're going to be good just because I'm a Lobo fan. But I think there's a lot of optimism, at least what I've seen so far, is your pages as far as your football followers on Twitter. Has that been growing?
Yeah, I think it's been good. It's been a constant progression of growth in the football community too. Obviously, like you said, mentioned Bronco leaving after 1 year, not necessarily ideal or expected, but Coach Eck has come in, and I think he's done a real good job in the short time he's been head coach at UNM, and I think the defense will be much improved. I know they've added a couple key pieces on defense in the portal that I think they certainly needed to do. So I think they addressed needs on defense, and obviously, as you mentioned, they've got a couple studs coming in on offense that should make them pretty competitive next season. So I'm looking
He's
forward.
up. I just got one more thing. I'll turn it back to Erik or Rick, but I think he's just a different guy. No disrespect to Coach Mendenhall, though I was very disappointed that he left after 1 year. Very disappointed. But Coach X seems like he wants to be here. He's got the Lobo up sign, whatever that means. Every time I see him, I'm going to do it. I'm a Lobo man, so he's got me. He's got me doing it. He was at the pit a couple of weeks ago, going up the stairs, high fiving everybody. So the enthusiasm is contagious to me. Now, we don't know what it's like until he gets on the field. But so far, what I've seen, every time I open the paper, I'm like, man, how did they get that dude? So we'll see. Got to put it together on the field. But thanks for that.
I think Coach X social media posts have just been electric, especially the one last night at Buc-ee's in the rain. I mean, pour that into my veins. You can tell he is about to laugh sometimes too before he says it, and it makes it even funnier. So Noah, what do you think about the contrast of styles on social media from one coach to the next? Being a college student, do kids around campus actually care who a football or basketball coach is? Is there as many people as dedicated and follow it like you around your age?
Yeah, I mean, to touch on your first point, definitely, I think, polar opposite guys. With Coach Eck having a, big presence on social media, it's been pretty fun to see. And I like him posting, update videos like the one last night. I think it's pretty cool. And as far as your second point, yeah, I think students do care. And hopefully a little buzz come football season next August. But yeah, I think little things like what Coach Eck is doing certainly make a difference to reach out to Lobo fans and stay connected and keep us all updated on how this whole new transition is going.
In regards to the engagement with the Twitter groups, how much of the groups would you say are actually UNM students versus people like us who have committed ourselves to the university? We're grads. We're not necessarily in school anymore. I mean, do you have any idea what that demographic or what the separation might look like?
Yeah, I'd say I would have to estimate it's a smaller amount. Our current UNM students, you certainly see your fair share, but I imagine I would say more than half are in your guys' boat, where they're longtime fans or graduates or just diehard local fans. So
cool. And then I do want to ask you about upcoming Saturday. It's obviously that game's been circled on the calendar for a while now. Seems like you follow the game real closely and you kind of understand the game of basketball. But how do people find you on Twitter? And then there might be some people watching now, some viewers, people that kind of follow our show, our page. How do they find you on Twitter, and how do they join the community groups?
Yeah, so you can find me on Twitter. My username is @NoahCB_. I'm fairly active with posting, about Lobo content, and it's what makes me happy. So, and then as far as the communities go, if you go to the little community tab on Twitter on the homepage, and then the search bar on the right-hand top of the screen, and you can just search New Mexico basketball for the basketball community, and then New Mexico football for the football community. I know John put in a little question screening, if you will, for the basketball community to kind of limit the amount of bots and spam accounts that are able to enter. So you have to answer a little question. Think about kind of why you want to join, or if you're a Lobo fan, and then you can start posting in the community and interacting.
Right on. Cool. I think it's super engaging. I'm glad that it's something like that has put together, and it's really active. I think you've been probably the most active with that. How do I stop sharing here? Okay. I think people kind of get the idea where to find you, how consistent it is. But what talking about Saturday, how much do you know about Utah State? Do you have any predictions? Tough place to play. Utah State played last night, and Nevada or UNLV actually gave them a run for their money. Played pretty well, but Utah State is tough, man. What's your take there?
Yeah, I think Utah State, New Mexico. I mean, as their record shows, I think those are the two best teams in the conference. So I'm really eager to see how the Lobos come out on Saturday in Logan. It'll be the best atmosphere they play in, I think, all season on the road. Certainly not better than the pit, but it'll be the best road atmosphere they play in. So I'm really curious to see how they're able to adjust to that. And I think defense will be, a big key. I've been really, really pleased with UNM's defense throughout this season, and especially notably in that Boise State game. I was in the crowd, and it was a lot of fun to watch the Lobos just throttle the Broncos. So, yeah, I mean, I know a little bit about Utah State. I know they, snuck out last night with a win, and I know that they're a good team shooting the three. So, yeah, I'm real eager for this one on Saturday. And prediction wise, I think it's going to be really close. And I can't go against my Lobos. So I'm going to say they'll win by lucky number 7.
Okay, I like it. Optimistic guy. Before we let you go, Noah, thanks again for jumping on. I'll probably be bothering you here in the future. Would love to collaborate with you guys and the Twitter group there. We're all for kind of supporting you guys and helping you guys build that community. But we do have a comment from one of our viewers, John Romero. Noah, thank you for all you do. We need a new generation of Lobo fan to keep the momentum going for years to come. Coach Eck rocks. I kind of second that sentiment. So thanks again for coming on short notice. Ed, Rick, do you guys have anything for Noah before we let him go?
Just appreciate Noah. Keep the good stuff coming, and we'll talk with you soon.
Yeah, no, it's same thing here. You're doing a great job, and thanks a lot for everything you do. I plan on starting to follow me. I'm not on Twitter much. My wife says I spend too much time trolling and scrolling, so I got to stop some things. But I will check out your Twitter page.
Yeah, thanks again, guys. I appreciate you having me on.
Yep. Go Lobos. We'll probably check in with you here in the next couple of weeks. You can find him at NoahCB_. Again, he kind of moderates the Lobo basketball and Lobo football fan groups on Twitter. If you aren't following them now, go ahead and give them a follow on Twitter and kind of get your latest. It's all fun too. I think a lot of the stuff on there is humorous and not so seriously, but thanks again for jumping on.
Thanks, guys.
All right. I was going to take a quick commercial break, but I think we'll just kind of jump into it. I don't know, guys. What you guys think about Noah? I don't think Twitter was really around, Rick, when you and I were in college. Social media wasn't really around. I think Facebook had kind of just taken off. But even then, I didn't know how to use it or even really bothered to care to how to use it.
Well, I was a big MySpace guy, Erik, in the early days. You got your top 8 friends. You can have music videos up. You could have your background with whatever you like. Had a lot going on my page. Facebook was okay for a while. But, yeah, this is a whole new era of social media. I think a lot of kids, his age and younger aren't even on Twitter probably. So maybe that's the reason for the skew towards the older generation. But it's great to get a student's thoughts about the program and just overall thoughts on the team. So it's cool to get a guy that's really into it, not from the state, and just get his view, but just amazing content. And a lot of it is quite humorous. So I hope he keeps it coming.
And it's a lot of work, man. It really is, with the video, the editing. You also got to be witty about it too, and keep it lighthearted. And it's hard to keep up with. You got to dedicate a lot of time to it. So I'm glad that someone's out there that's doing it. And I'm glad that following's kind of building on social media for Lobo athletic support. And it's fun seeing Coach Eck on there too, as much as he is. I know that once he started coming on almost every other day with recruiting updates, I think Patino came on, was out in front of the pit, and it was a little, I don't even know what you would call it, almost looked forced. It was kind of funny in the same sense. And he gave his go at it, but I don't think I've seen him post a video on Twitter since then. So I don't know if that's going to be a regular thing we should expect from him or not.
I don't know. I just love it. And then Coach Eck hops in the car with his coach, and his coach is just sitting there loboing the hell up, brothers. It is too good. It's too good. I love it. And Coach Patino said, what the hell am I doing? I'm talking to my own phone, but we love it, Coach P. Keep the content coming.
Yeah. Okay. Focusing or shifting our focus over to Saturday. I think we kind of want to recap a little bit of what happened yesterday around the Mountain West. But we're looking forward to Saturday. Lobos travel to Logan, Utah to face 9-1 Utah State for first place in the conference. Battle of the best, kind of the last remaining two standing powerhouse teams in the Mountain West. It's an interesting matchup. I mean, we'll kind of dive more into the X's and O's parts, what Utah State likes to run, kind of I don't know the word I'm looking for, but just how Utah State has been able to sustain the level of success that their program has with the amount of turnover that they've had over the last, 5 or 6 years it's unbelievable. It really is, especially now in the new age of college athletics, but they're doing it, and they're basically a lock to get an auto bid right now is what everything I'm seeing. Lobos are still kind of on the bubble, but before we jump into that game and kind of dissecting it apart, Rick, I'll let you kind of roll through what happened yesterday kind of around the Mountain West, give us some updates on some games. So go ahead and take it away, sir.
Right. The Aggies, before having to host the Lobos, had to play UNLV at home in the Spectrum last night. It was a loud one, as UNM can expect, and Utah State went up double digits early. To myself, I thought it might get out of hand. UNLV turned up the defensive pressure. They battled back, finally found a way to score against the zone down low. Deedon Thomas, another huge game, 22.6 assists. And then the two pieces of Henley and Hill for UNLV each had 16. And at one point, I think, 3 or 4 minutes left, the game was tied. Coming down the stretch again, Deedon Thomas had, a free throw after an and one. I believe that was to tie it again. Just unfortunate for him. He's missed a lot of big free throws over the last few weeks here. He's also made a lot of big shots. But Utah State really played out of sorts. Coach Calhoun really ripped them after the game in his radio show. And I think it was kind of to prep them for New Mexico. He let them know that type of effort from Martinez and crew wasn't going to cut it. But the thing about Utah State that we'll get into is they have like 4 or 5 good guard players. And the one to step up last night was Drake Allen, transfer. He came in 15 out the bench, and then Albury also had 16. So they were able to hold on, like Erik said, 76, 71. 2 nights ago, San Diego State had to come back in similar fashion, and they actually came back and won. They were down double digits to San Jose, ended up winning 71-68. Magoon Guath, huge game, 24 points. Miles Bird, kind of probably sagging off in the Mountain West Conference Player of the Year race, in my eyes, has played quietly in the first half of a lot of games. And then Nevada again falls to Boise 66-56 last night. Cardenas led the way for the Broncos 18-5, Degenhart with 17, and the troubles continue for Alfred and crew. I mean, the day before he was talking about removing the players' lockers and making them change in the hallway if they didn't change the way they were playing. Well, this game did not show anything that they changed the way they were playing, falling by 10 and just looking dismal. for CSU, the up-and-coming team really in the conference, we have news, Lobo fans. There's a contender for Conference Player of the Year, and he goes by the name of Neat Clifford, just dominating over their last 4 wins, averaging 22 points, 10 rebounds, 6 assists, throwing it down on people, will be in the NBA or G League next year and will be fun to watch. Colorado State only 1 game behind the Aggies and Lobos at 8-2. Switching over to the ladies, Lady Lobos lost a tough one in Boise, 89-80. Vianney Cumber becomes the 3rd time all-time Lobo and 3-pointers made with 219. All-time leader is Lateskia Duff at 239. So she will probably be catching that if she hits about 22 more with 10 games left, I believe. Anything stick out to you guys, though, in that, I guess, UNLV and Aggie game last night, moving forward into the Lobo game, that you think we could take forward for the Lobos?
Ed, why don't you go ahead and take this one? I know you had some thoughts on the game.
Yeah, there's so many things there. I was doing a high school game last night, and I got there for the first half with about 4 minutes left, and I watched the rest, and I watched the rest of the first half today. And they run a lot of dribble handoffs, a lot of flare screens, a lot of pin downs. And they one thing, they 5th in the nation in assists. They'll pass up a good shot for a great one. They'll reverse the ball, they move the ball, run a lot of pin downs, like we said, from Martinez and Falsef. And Albury played last night. Drake Allen, I think, has a little bit of Grayson Allen in him. He did last night. He played really well. So they average 83 points at on the season. New Mexico at 82.4. I was impressed with the way they go to the half court. One of our listeners said this, and I picked that up too. But 1-3-1 half full court trap to a man. My son made several good points on their 2-3 defense, or their zone defense, which has man-to-man principles, and they're just I think, and I think we'll get into the culture there too of how they've been able to still win with 3 different coaches. That's amazing to me. Yeah, so I got a lot out of that. And I'm going to get some of my son's talking points here real quick because he made some good points. Okay, he liked the way UNLV attacked the zone in the second half. 2 or 3 times in the second half, they went low post entries into Bear Cherry. He went 1-on-1 with the middle man at the bottom of the 2-3, and that got Utah State's big man Gartisi in foul trouble. I don't know how you say it. He had 3 fouls. Templin checked in for him, 6'8" and smaller. Cherry took advantage of that. That may be a way UNM attacks the zone, get the ball to Nelly at the low post, let him go to work and try to get Gartisi in foul trouble. I thought that was a pretty good take by my son. He was watching. He's in California, or he's in Florida at Disney World. He'll be back next week. So that zone, man principles, they do close out. So can Dent get to the gaps? Paint touches will be important, very important in this game. Getting the ball in the paint, but how do you get those paint touches is what's important. And Rick, I'll let you touch on what you thought they should do. I don't want to take any of your thunder there, but I think there's a lot. I think they're a very good team. I was very impressed. Albury gave him some. What did he have last night? 16 last night. They played very well as a team. They've got 193 threes on the season. They shoot 48.6% from the field. And so this is Gerald Calhoun is 19-2 so far this season. Danny Sprinkle 1 season at 28-7. Ryan Odom was there for 2, and his record was 44-25. So would we think that would ever happen in New Mexico, having 3 different coaches? Alford came in, and Neal came in. That fell off, and then Weir came in, and that fell off, and then Coach Patino's been here. We've seen success, but not the kind of success that they've had. It's a good program. It's going to be a big challenge for UNM on Saturday. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. 7-point win, Noah said. That's going to be tough, man. But I'm really looking forward to it.
I think, Ed, you're talking about how are they able to come back so strong this year yet again after having a new coach. And like it's been mentioned time and time again in the preseason polls, everyone had them no higher than 5th this season going in. But if you looked at the players that Coach Calhoun was able to retain, Falsalev, Martinez, Carson Templin, Isaac Johnson, they didn't, keep guys like Darius Brown obviously went to the NBA and a huge loss, and great Osabar. And sometimes it's funny to me on Twitter when people say, if we only had Toppin, if we only had Toppin. Well, imagine if the other Mountain West teams had kept who they had on their team. Imagine if great Osabar was on Utah State right now, right? We're talking about, a different league. So with Utah State bringing those guys back, much like the Lobos, they retained, I think, about 30%, of their minutes, and they have a lot of older guys. Martinez has played at 3 different schools. Falsalev, only a sophomore, but he's the perfect sidekick as a slasher to Martinez. And you're mentioning Drake Allen. He's really the wild card off the bench, along with others. So this team really is deep, and keeping those key pieces really allowed them to gel. And when we spoke to Martinez and Drake Allen at Media Day, you could just hear them speaking with confidence, but never in my wildest dreams did I think they would be in, first place again after the season they had last year and losing who they lost. But Erik, did you want to get into a little bit more detail about the matchup zone and how the Lobos are going to look to attack that?
Yeah, so I've played against the matchup zone. I've run part of a matchup zone when I played. I know that you did over at St. Pius too. They really just try to take any part of the middle away, right? So with the matchup zone, it's kind of a unique matchup or a unique type of zone. There's a lot of switching going on. So it's you kind of follow your man and then trade him off with another defender. So you are a zone, so you are kind of moving as the ball moves, but you're still matching up with the nearest man. And any guy kind of handling the ball, there's more of a handoff between 2 defenders. So you're going to constantly see the ball handler kind of get handed off to another defender. So at times there might be like a double team. And Utah State runs a really unique type of matchup zone to where they might keep that double team on you, or they might release it and then come back and double team. So any type of entry pass down into the block to Nelly, anyone kind of to the high ball screen area, they're going to trap it either from the weak side or they're going to trap it from the strong side. So the guy that's going to feed the ball they're going to kind of fall down onto that man. So if I'm the Lobos, I'm trying to anticipate knowing that trap is coming at some point. So I either got to be really decisive with it and look for a shooter or look for a slasher to the basket, because someone's going to be open. So you got to be quick with the decisions, or you got to look to overload one of the sides, right? Because they can't bring the entire defense to one side of the court. So I'm going to look for guys to kind of pass the ball to one side, kind of roll into the corner. And if I'm Patino, I'm looking at shooters. So I'm looking at guys like Applehans or True, who's shown to really be efficient on those corner threes. Looking for guys like Borovichinen to kind of knock down some threes. So really overloading one side with some shooters, because those are kind of the weak spots in that matchup zone. But it's tough with a team like Utah State because they rotate so well, they communicate really well. And then they throw some wrinkles into it too and kind of throw those double teams at you when it's least expected. So you got to prepare for it in a certain way, but then you also got to prepare to kind of jump out of it and jump into something else as an option too. So Rick, did I miss anything? Did you kind of have anything to throw on top of that, or Ed, any experience for you with the matchup zone?
I think you made a great point on all your points there. I've seen plenty of matchup zones, but not when I played as more 2-3, but as a referee and a broadcaster, I've seen a lot of those, and I thought you made a lot of great points there. And I think one of the things when UNM played UNLV last Saturday, the announcer made a point. I think the Lobos ball, the floor spacing was very good. And Nelly, not so good of a passer early in the season when he faced the double team, a much better one now. I saw him pass out of the double team against UNLV, and the floor spacing was good. They moved it quick. They'll have to do that, as you mentioned, on Saturday. You mentioned the corner shooters. Amzil's got to hit a couple. Now, if he's in the lineup, we mentioned he's got plantar fasciitis, and believe me, if you've never had it, it's really painful. And Rick was right in our group text saying that it takes a while. I don't know what his availability is, but someone's got to knock down that corner three because it's going to be open. That's what UNLV, when they started making some shots, then the game changed. They were right in it. They got Bear Cherry, got some good looks, pin downs down low, one-on-ones, drew some fouls. And so that zone, but the way Calhoun plays that, as you mentioned, Erik, the double team could come from the strong side or weak side, and they cause havoc, man. They put ball pressure on the passer and get their active hands and arms, in the passing, the deflections, steals, turn them into points. They're a very good team, very well coached. And Rick, you made a good point. Calhoun got those dudes to stay, because usually when a new coach comes in, they're looking for the exit signs, man. And this guy, I didn't sign up with this dude, man. I'm out of here. He got 10 guys to stay. You got to give it to him. You got to give him credit there. And he had a good group to work with, and I'm impressed with them. Very impressed. And they've been together. And you're right about Osabar, Rick. If he had stayed, man, wow. You're right. Toppin had 22 and 17 last night for Texas Tech. They beat TCU, but it doesn't matter. He's not here anymore. We can wish and wish he's not here. But I think Erik, those points are all, again, can Dant attack the gaps in that zone? He's been very good at it. I think Rick made a good point about Dant's mid-range shooting. He's been on fire, dynamite. He's a willing passer. When he gets in the paint, it's game on. He'll find you. He will find you. If you're open, he's a scoring point guard first. But if you're open, he will find you. And you got to be able to knock down some shots. I think, Nolan, have we really seen him break loose? I don't think we've seen him break loose yet. He came in and advertised as that shooter. He's had a few good shooting games, but has he had that game yet where we're like, man, the guy's on fire? Not yet. So he's got to be able to knock down some shots on Saturday too.
Yeah,
Hey, Rick.
He's shooting 25% from 3-point land. True Washington has really picked it up this year. He's shooting, I think, 38, close to 40%. So he's been able to knock it down. But the thing about this matchup zone, it's hard to mimic when you're in practice, right? Because the other guys, the scout guys don't know how to run the matchup zone the same as Drake Allen, who's actually also one of the best rated defenders in the conference with Martinez and Falsalev out there. So, I mean, the thing about it is they have to be decisive, right? When they catch the ball, know where the defender is going to be, understand where the space is going to be, and that the elbow area is going to be open. Someone has to be able, whether it's Amzil or Jovan, to be able to catch there and to either make a free throw line shot or dump it over the top to Nelly, because the high-low game is going to be there. At times we've seen Amzil airmail it over the top of Nelly's head, and other times they've had good chemistry. But yeah, the three-pointer, Lobos have only shot 32% of their shots from deep on the season. They only made 3 in the last game after making their first 3. They got to make some at some point. Applehans has been quiet as we bring up this graphic here of attempt rate. As I'm talking about, the Lobos only attempt about 33% of their shots from 3. And are not making a high percentage, whereas you see Utah State up and to the right where they shoot over 40% of their shots from 3. Last night was no different. I think almost half or more were from the 3-point line, and they make a good amount of them, as we can see here. But I kind of wanted to talk about the other side of the ball, or I guess before I move on, I think it's really easy to say the Lobos need to get out and run, right? Because we know that's where they're able to do their dirty work in transition, and they really get on these extended leads like that 21-0 run versus CSU and the others that just destroyed teams in the pit. But against UNLV, they only had, 4 transition points, Erik? And, when they're forced to play this slow down game, it's really hard for them to get out and run. So whenever Utah State misses, they got to look for transition opportunities that way if they're not causing a lot of turnovers.
Yeah, I was looking at, 4 points off of turnovers and only 5 points off of a fast break. Where you look at that game against Boise State, wouldn't they have like close to 30 points in fast break points? So they're at their best when they're running and getting up and down the floor, where UNLV almost kind of took that away from them in a sense, and trying to slow them down. I do think Utah State does play at a much faster pace than than a UNLV did. They like to shoot a lot of threes, as you can see by that graphic we just showed, but they also like to shoot early in the shot clock. These guys, like, they have 5 guards that are all capable and high efficient 3-point shooters. So they got to be really careful with knowing who the personnel is on the floor. They rotate well, they pass the ball well. So knowing where the shooters are at all times, and knowing that any second that they get a chance to pull the trigger, they're pulling it regardless of that shot clock being at 30 or that shot clock being at 5. So that's just how they run. That's just how they operate. If they're going to get an open look, they're going to take it. So the Lobos got to be kind of sharp throughout the whole possession on the defensive side, because this Utah State team is extremely efficient and they're looking to attack you from basically every different angle.
I think to that point, if Omzil's not available, rebounding becomes very important. Borovichinen has done a good job on the board, so they're going to have to rebound. True comes in and gets some boards, but rebounding is going to be real key. A couple more talking points from my son. He's like I said, in Florida, but he's paying attention. We've never won up there in the Patino area, up in Utah State. We won on the road at UNLV for the first time on Saturday during the Patino era. Winning on the road at the Spectrum would further solidify that this year's team is the best team we've had under Patino because of their ability to win conference games on the road. Obviously, there's more season left than after this game, but it would be big. Talking point number 2, this is the most hostile crowd UNM and anyone who plays there, frankly, has played in this year. UNM has not really played in front of a hostile crowd except at St. John's and Madison Square Garden, but that was 2 months ago. It's hard to hear in the Spectrum. UNM is going to have to withstand runs. They're going to have to punch back just like they did against UNLV, against the tough road crowd. UNM is used to being the team that has the crowd behind them. How will they respond? And I think those are all solid points, all solid ones, and UNM is going to be looking at that on Saturday.
We got some breaking news really quick here. Former Lobo running back and Arizona running back Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt in the Shriners Senior Bowl. I believe, won offensive MVP. I have the volume off, but he scored 2 touchdowns and ran for over 80 yards. He was wearing the Lobo logo on one side of his helmet and the AZ logo on the other. So got a lot of screen time for the Lobos tonight. Looking good. Congrats to Bill. And Dollar Henry was also former running back from the Lobos, was also playing out there. So
hey, that's awesome.
Quick football news. Good look for the Lobos tonight. But getting back into some of the personnel of who the Lobos can expect at the guard position from Utah State. We mentioned Drake Allen. He's averaging 6.5 and 4. He's a fantastic defender. Really had a great game against UNLV, is able to create for himself and actually knock down a few threes. He comes off the bench. Dayton Albury has been starting. He had 16 versus UNLV, a very quick and explosive player, able to take guys off the dribble. Averaged 17 points a game last season for Queens before transferring over. Dexter Akano comes off the bench, transfer from Oregon State. I think he'll be in the 6th man in the conference running with his teammate Carson Templin, I'm guessing. But he's not, he's a fairly good scorer, averaging 8.6 points, 3.5 rebounds. And then all of a sudden they bring in another guard the past 2 games, a freshman from Utah, Jordy Barnes, and he knocked down a 3 against UNLV and played 20 minutes. So they're just pulling guards out of everywhere. Erik, I'll let you kind of hit on the 2 big dogs here, 2 of our favorite guys in the conference at the wing.
Yeah, those guards that you just mentioned now are kind of more of your role player guards, right? But they're all very capable shooters, scorers. I think the one that you kind of mentioned, that Dayton Albury guy transfer from Queens, not a guy that's going to beat you with size or strength, but he's lightning quick, beats you off the dribble, but can also knock down some threes. So he's a guy that you got to be ready to move your feet on. But Drake Allen, he comes off the bench, but he had 15 points against UNLV. Hasn't really put up the high scoring total, but he's a really long and tall considered a point guard, but he plays off guard at times. And then that Jordy Barnes that you just mentioned, some guy that they just threw in. He's a freshman, true freshman point guard. I think he's older because he came off of a mission, but they were talking about Calhoun playing 2 point guard lineups last night and kind of experimenting with that in some of the rotations. And that just kind of shows you the depth that they have at the guard position. Utah State in the Mountain West probably has the most depth out of any team in the conference right now, not only as like capable scorers, but playmakers, guys that have the ball in their hands for a majority of the time, feel comfortable running an offense, feel comfortable penetrating and finding the shooters, just understand the game really well, high basketball IQ. And then we haven't even talked about the two main staples in Ian Martinez and Mason Falslove, who could also be in the conversation for player of the year, but I think they're kind of sharing duties at this point. But before we kind of jump into their personnel and their scouting report, did you want to add a thought to what I was just talking
I
about?
was just, one thing we haven't, you're talking about all these guards, and last night they went to a 4-guard lineup at times only with Carson Templin. And I think, Gadarezzi, there's a guy who starts at center for Utah State, only ended up playing 10 minutes in the game. Templin is a good rebounder. I think he's the 12th leading rebounder in the conference coming off the bench. But I think Nelly, with the confidence he has and the way he's been playing, should be able to feast on offensive boards, because they're going to be playing in that zone. It's difficult sometimes to know who you're supposed to be boxing out, right? And Nelly has been having these monster board games. He'll have the size and strength on any of their post players. So, if they go to this 4-guard lineup and Amzil is hurt, I think that plays into the Lobos' favor. They can take out Amzil and, play 4 smaller guys, maybe have Philly play the 4 if that's needed against this team. So I think their options might actually be expanded against Utah State if they go with that smaller lineup. So I think that's something the Lobos should be able to expose, is just Nelly's strength down low. And I just wanted to hit on that before we move on.
No, I think it's a good point, because the Lobos kind of have some dynamic players in the guard position. You talk about like a Philly B or even a Jovan, who are guys that can kind of play a wide range of positions from like a 2-guard all the way to the 5 if you really asked them to play that. But you were talking about attacking that Utah State matchup zone, having a guy like Jovan or Philly B who can kind of, and even Amzil, if he's healthy enough to play, to kind of fill near that elbow free throw line area. They're all very capable passers. They can all knock down shots from there, and they're all capable of kind of scoring in the post. And they're all 6'7", 6'8", 6'9", or taller. And that's something that I don't think Utah State has really had to face off yet. So I think the Lobos, I think you hit a good point there, Rick. I think the Lobos definitely have an advantage on the boards on both sides of the floor, especially in the zone, because you're not really matching up with a guy and having to box out. But there's just more of an opportunity to get offensive boards if you are playing a zone like that. Ed, do you have any comments before we kind of hit on Mason Falslove and Ian Martinez?
I think Borvicinen, yes, he's played well. He could fill those roles. He's come in and really played well the second half of the season. I still hope Amzil is available. He's got experience. He knows how to bang inside. There's times he didn't give us much against UNLV. He played. They took him out with 10 minutes left. He didn't go back in. He's had a week to heal up and get treatment. So I'd still hope he's in the game, because you mentioned at his size, 6'8", 6'9". Rick had mentioned maybe they'll try a high-low at the elbow with Amzil, and the entry passes into the post are going to be very important, very important. So I think he's a pretty decent post passer. So I hope he's available. I really do. Borvicinen's good. They've asked him to do a lot. That might be asking, in my opinion, this is what I think. Rick's got great basketball knowledge. That might be, to me, asking a lot for him. But he's been capable. They're going to Martinez and Falsev. He's been having to guard the toughest wings in the conference, and the assignments on Saturday certainly don't get any better. Got Martinez at 16.7 and Falsev at 15.2, and he's going to have to chase through screens, those brush screens, dribble handoffs, they run a lot of stuff and they run it well, man. So UNM is going to have to be very disciplined defensively on Saturday for sure.
Yeah, I think with the high-low, and maybe I'm going off on a little bit of a tangent, but I wanted to just make a point with Nelly. I think he does have an opportunity down there, Rick, but I think he's got to really be focused and anticipating a lot of those double teams that are going to crash down on him and know where he's got to look to find a slasher, a shooter, because we've seen Nelly hold on to the ball a little bit too long at times, or he gets a little carried away with dribbling and trying to kind of body up and get to that shoulder and get to a hook shot. He's not going to have that much time to go ahead and work a defender like that. He's got to be either straight up, one lean one way and then up to the basket and get a shot off, or he's got to look to kick it out to someone or find a slasher. That's just because that's how effective that matchup zone is. They're going to look to bring the double team often, and they're going to bring it in several different ways. So having outlets around the elbow area, like a Philly B, or like a Jovan, like an Amzil, and then hopefully guys like CJ and True and Applehands, guys around the perimeter will get some looks and just knock him down. All I know is the three that they hit against UNLV is probably not going to cut it. I think they're going to need to get more from their perimeter looks.
Ronnie Chavez agrees with you. He thinks CJ is finally going to do it, Ed. And Erik, he thinks this is his time to shine.
And I would love that. I think he's capable. I mean, what did you say earlier, Rick? He's shooting 25% from three right now on the season. At North Texas, 3 years or the 2 years that he was there, he was a 39% 3-point shooter. So it's there. He just got to find it.
Yeah, they definitely need some bench presence. Utah State bench last night. What did you say, Ed? Scored 37 points, and they really picked up the slack, for the Stars. And, when UNM Stars fail to score big, it's usually a struggle. But I think one thing, I just wanted to kind of point out, we're not giving the Lobos a lot of time here tonight, but I think we've really seen Donovan Dent's leadership over the past 5 to 10 games take form around this team. And when I spoke to him in Las Vegas, he talked about being a leader and trying to do that on the defensive end. But I think when you're trying to be a leader, it takes some feeling out process, right? To understand the chemistry. And, we heard the story. He said something on the plane after they lose it to San Jose State to kind of bring the guys together and let them know, they should still have this confidence. And since then, they've really been on a tear. And I think, his play really does the talking. And I think we really need to give him more credit and really evolving in front of our eyes as a leader, because I criticized him at the beginning of the year. We had a whole segment about the Lobos not having a leader at the beginning of this season. And it wasn't a knock on him. It's just something that was not there at that time. It takes time to grow up, and he's done that. And not just with his play, but obviously the things he's saying to the team and the communication amongst the guys has just really been good. And, I expect them to carry that same fire. Erik, we were talking about it last night. How do the Lobos carry that defensive pressure and what they've been doing at home on the road? They have to play that villain, that bad guy role. They have to make the fans get crazy. They have to shut them up as well, right? But they can't get too far ahead of themselves. Much like UNLV, if they get down early in the game, they got to buckle in on defense. But I'm just looking to see what do you guys think the fans of Utah State are going to have for us as far as some gimmicks in the crowd? I'm trying to think what they could have as far as the background knowledge of the Lobos to harass us. I know Donovan Dent was a Boise State recruit at one point. I don't know what they're going to give to him. Do you guys have any thoughts, chat, commenters? What do you think they're going to give us at the Spectrum?
I don't. They're a creative group, though. I can tell you that much. I know when Boise State went there, they had the Leon Rice tears, and like they were handing out water bottles that had like a label that had Leon Rice tears on it. So I would think they'd have something pretty creative. This is a big game on their schedule too. It's a battle for first place, and they're going to come up with something creative. They packed that place, and it's really student heavy too. Go ahead, Rick or Ed.
Of Rick Pitino telling Richard Pitino you're not your daddy or something like that. You never know and Richard Pitino's he's not rattled, man. That guy is he's got a game to coach, but I could see something like that. But I just wanted to mention one real quick thing. I was listening to JJ Buck this morning, and this is a chance for UNM to improve its resume in their quad one wins. VCU, a good win. UCLA, a good win. USC, a solid win. A loss to ASU and St. John's, and then a loss to New Mexico State, which has sort of been erased with New Mexico State, and then a loss to San Jose State. Those were two bad losses, but the UNLV beat Utah State too. So, but this is a chance for UNM to improve their resume in a very good chance.
Yeah. Rick, did you want to quickly hit on False Love and Ian Martinez? I know that you're
everyone
a big fan of Martinez's game.
Familiar with them, but like Ed mentioned, averaging 17 for Martinez, around 15 for False 11. False 11 has really improved his shooting percentage this year, and that has really made him the perfect sidekick for Martinez. He slashes hard. I've always said he reminds me of a smaller Manu Ginobili, the way he just goes to the hoop with reckless abandon. This team gets on the floor. It's really led by these two guys who just stick their nose in the dirt and, really lead this team by example. Starting, though, at the forward position, alongside Gattaretzi at center is Tucker Anderson, and he is the definition of a streaky shooter. He can make 4 or 5 in a row, and then he could miss all his shots for 4 or 5 games in a row. He only played about 10 minutes last night. Coming off the bench, the other bigs, Carson Templin, who is just a bully out there. He ripped Bear Cherry's jersey last night. He's not afraid to hit guys with hard screens, run you over. Like I mentioned, I think he's the 12th leading rebounder in the conference off the bench with 5.5 a game, but also can stretch it from the 3. And as a sophomore, he's really showing, that why he deserves more minutes, and actually has been taking minutes from Isaac Johnson, the big fish, the big mustache man, who's also capable of hitting the 3. Hasn't really seen many minutes, I think, because of Templin and how well Templin has played this year. He's just taking Isaac Johnson's minutes, but Johnson is a pick and pop player. He's not afraid to let the 3 ball go. So when Nelly gets out there on that pick and roll, it's going to be imperative for them to communicate somehow. They're not going to be able to hear. So how are they going to get around those screens? The big guys are going to let it go from up top, and Nelly, Amzil, the other bigs have to get out on those shooters when they let it go. But I think, like I mentioned, Lobos will have probably the advantage down low with the way Nelly's been playing, and I think he can take it on any of the bigs from Utah State.
Okay. I'm going to try to wrap up the show, but I do want to get your guys' kind of last minute takes. We covered a lot, and I think we kind of outlined what we feel like UNM needs to do to take advantage of certain scenarios. We know what Utah State does really well. So, Ed, I'm going to pass this one over to you. I want to get your top 3 keys to the game, if you will, for the Lobos to kind of pull out the dub in Logan.
I think one of them is take care of the basketball, attack the 2-3 defense, and you know what? The other one is make your free throws. I think UNM is shooting 66 or 68% from the free throw line. So I think those are 3 big. I'd say I'll add rebounds in there too, but I think those are the big ones, especially attacking that defense that get paint touches. But my son was mentioning the way you get paint touches. So I think those are real keys there.
Yeah. Rick, your keys to the game.
Yeah, we're probably looking at a 5 or 6 point spread in favor of Utah State based on what Ken Palm is projecting. I think the Lobos need to come out and try to get those turnovers early and often, push that defense, make Utah State get out of their sets, make them run their offense from way up top and not let them get, where they want to be on offense. And the Lobos were able to do that against San Diego State and Boise. And then on the other end, how are the Lobos going to be able to score and who's going to knock down threes? They really need the likes of Washington and Applehans and some of these other guys to step up. The bench play has not been strong as of late, so I think they're due in a big way, hopefully.
Yeah, and I'll give my takes. I think my keys to the game, and maybe it's a little generic, but I'm going to start out with defense. I think the Lobos defense has been playing really well as of late. They've been really aggressive. They've been rotating well. I think up to this point, this might be the best defense that Utah State might have to face in an overall physicality and kind of ball rotation. So I think the Lobos, which stopping them on the defensive side do lead to fast break points, do lead to transition points. So I think that's one of my takeaways. But one of my keys to the game too is just kind of avoiding turnovers. Because once you start turning over the ball, this is a team that takes advantage of it and really converts those into points, and they convert them into points fast. That 39 points in transition or fast break? Ed, is that what you told us yesterday? So I think the Lobos really need to take care of the ball on the offensive side and really honor those possessions and try to get what they can out of them without giving some easy takeaways away. And then the last one I'm going to have to go with the boards. I think it's going to be a collective effort on the glass, especially on the offensive side, and hopefully get some second chance points. I think there's a clear advantage with the overall size. So I think if they're able to control the glass, they could probably get a few more putbacks. So any last thoughts, guys, before we wrap it up?
I've just got one, and I think Rick made a good point. Can the Lobos make Utah State uncomfortable? I think that's an excellent point, and that's going to be, in their offensive sets. They've got to make them uncomfortable, get some steals themselves, play downhill, and they've done it. True Washington's another guy, and Donovan Dent said that, has been a key player all year long, always guarding the other team's best defender. They're going to put him on a lot of different players on Saturday, so I think his performance is going to be key again.
And I think we're in for a real show again with Dent, because they're going to be taking away the middle of the court. Like we said, how is he going to find his spaces and ways to attack? How is he going to get downhill and be effective? It's going to be very fun to see. And to your point about rebounding, Erik, remember, rebounding is not a skill. It's something you either got or you're not. It's an attitude. Rebounding is an attitude, not a skill. True. As Charles Barkley once said, right, Ed?
No, it's true. You know what? And to that point, look at Dennis Rodman. Rodman made a living on defense and rebounding. He could make free throws at the end of a game. He couldn't shoot. He didn't want to. All he wanted to do was rebound and play defense, man. And no one had an attitude to get that ball more than him. I never saw anybody rebound like that guy in my entire life watching the NBA. That was a while. It's been a while.
Yeah, and then before we wrap this up, I do want to get to some of the comments, because we got a few that came in earlier and just now. I don't want them to go unseen. But John Romero, I embrace the challenge as a Lobo fan with Utah State come Saturday. I'll be donning wristbands and headband while watching the game. Dead serious business. All hands on deck, including the fans. Yeah, I'm curious on how many Lobo fans make the trip out to Logan. I don't know if that's as easy of a trip. I know Kurt Roth and those guys will probably be out there, but be a fun trip. Ronnie Chavez, CJ's going to go off for 20 on Saturday. Write it down. Said CJ loves the spotlight. He had 20 in the Garden against St. John's. Was it 20? I know he had a really strong. He was kind of carrying them in the first half there for a little bit. David Fresquez, late night pit press. Let's go. Miguel Sanchez. I'm hoping Patino really leverages his wing height to play USU straight up. True Phillip Sacco Webb with a trapping D early and uses Donovan to draw crowd hitting cutters like True and Phillip. Yeah, I do agree. It's probably going to take a collective effort, but would be interested to see Sacco and Webb get some minutes in this game. Again, Miguel Sanchez, UNLV was winning when they took it to the bucket. We need to play bully ball. Again, with the size and physicality. And then John Romero, lastly, time for the cream, a.k.a. Lobos, to come to the top. I think that's a good one to finish off with. But for everyone tuning in tonight, we appreciate you guys. We appreciate you guys leaving comments and kind of joining the conversation. You can find us on Twitter. You guys are probably watching on Twitter now, and or Facebook or YouTube. Go follow our other social media outlets. Instagram, we got some pictures and videos up on there. Check out our website. We try to share all of our podcast content. So even though we go live on these video channels, we also kind of reshare the audio versions on Spotify and Apple Podcasts for re-listening. So we appreciate everyone's kind of engagement and downloading everything that they can. And don't hesitate in adding us on Twitter. But before I let you guys go, Rick, Ed, any last thoughts?
No, sir.
Comments?
Now, just really looking forward to this game. Should be the best game, hopefully, thus far in the conference. And not a lot of games have let us down for excitement across the league. So just anxious.
Yeah. Thanks again for everyone for tuning in. We'll catch you next time with a recap of Saturday's game and look to preview Wednesday's game. I think is it Wyoming? They play on
CSU, I
Wednesday.
CSU.
Oh, CSU.
Yeah.
That's another interesting one, but let's not focus on them just yet. Big one Saturday. You guys have a good night. Have a good weekend. Stay safe and go Lobos.